The bulk of New Zealand's foreign aid goes, and has always gone, to the Pacific Islands for obvious reasons. That's the hood we're in. But more than $200 million will be given to Southeast Asia over the next 3 years, nearly 12% of our total aid, which is not high on a GDP basis. Little reporting is done on where that money goes, who it helps, or what sort of return is received on investment. Our reporter Zach Fleming wanted to change that, so he travelled to Vietnam earlier this year, courtesy of the Asia New Zealand Foundation, for a series of stories. This was part 2 of that trip. Recently we brought you the story of 2 young New Zealand women helping save Vietnam's moon bears. Today a visit to a remote mountainous region in central Vietnam, where our government is giving more than $2 million to try and pull ethnic minorities out of abject poverty. But, as Zach reports, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade is refusing to be interviewed about the project.
3 keys turn simultaneously and the small beige lockbox opens. Context stripped, these women could be in a bunker or a submarine launching a nuclear missile. But these coffee growers are actually opening their vault, because the nearest bank is a 3-hour round trip from here. Until recently, saving wasn't in their vocabulary.
Before World Vision, I grew coffee but only got a small harvest. Life was very, very difficult.
Mrs. Ho T Bick, a 38-year-old single mother of a 9-year-old boy, has lived in Ra Lai village her entire life. It's in the Hoang Hoa district in the Quang Tri province, smack bang in the middle of Vietnam, just 20 minutes from the border with Laos. She used to earn just 30 New Zealand dollars a year, abject poverty regardless of definition. And if living off 8 cents a day wasn't already hard enough, Mrs. Bick has no hands and no access to social welfare. Her parents were poor farmers, so when her hands were injured in a fire when she was a baby, they were cut off. Her house is a hut, 1 room around the size of an average Kiwi bedroom. It's also her kitchen, her lounge, her everything. Made of bamboo, there's gaps in all of the walls and the floor, and the roof is corrugated iron. It's deafening when it rains. Money is spent on essentials. Her son walks the 3 kilometres to school because they can't afford a motorbike.
When we get more income this year, I want to buy more clothes for my son, because in the past he only had 1 set of clothes. So I want to buy more clothes for him and educational material and more food for him so he can learn more at school.
That's past tense now though. Her son had 1 set of clothes, until a nearly $3 million aid partnership between World Vision and our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade reached her village. It's a teach a man how to fish, feed him for a lifetime typed project, targeting just 1,000 households. The director of World Vision Vietnam, Tran Tu Huyen, is born and bred Vietnamese, and she told me it's the worst poverty she's ever seen.
The disparity between the rich and the poor, and urban and rural, and also mountainous and lowland is still very high.
In one district in the Quang Tri province, more than 85% of people live below the poverty line, which means they're earning less than or just over $1 a day. Some are trying to support families on that dollar. The child malnutrition rate in these districts tops 30%. When I visited, Mrs. Bick and her neighbours were being taught how to make their own organic fertiliser from the discarded pulp of coffee cherries. It's a simple process. The pulp is shoveled into a large pile, layered with fertiliser helper, more pulp, more fertiliser helper, and then some leaves and organic matter on top. Cover it with a tarpaulin, leave it for a few months, and easy. A cheap, sustainable way for these farmers to make organic fertiliser, and therefore organic coffee. The hope is that come this time next year, when the crop can be called organic thanks to the new fertiliser, they'll fetch around 50% more on the market, netting these farmers a 50% increase in income. Lee Du Hiep is a market facilitator for World Vision in Vietnam. He helps connect the farmers to the buyers.
When they are poor, they are the most vulnerable. They they will not be respected. They don't have the confidence, and by implementing the project activities, they become more and more empowered in the community, and they become more confident.
Mrs. Bick's income has increased from just $30 a year to now around $200 a year. She's still living below the poverty line, but it's a start.
The starting point is a very, very poor. So for us, those changes are very, very significant. Some successful families, farmers, they can increase up to three times their income of the last year harvest.
World Vision says 71% of households have reported an increase in revenue since the aid project started.
We help them to work as producer groups so that they can save costs on the input, but can gain more price when they buy things or selling things as a group. And we help them to link to the buyer and to the company, coffee company, so that they can ensure the price, and they also can support one another when the price fluctuates.
The project has been going for 3 years now though, and with New Zealand providing the bulk of the money through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, $2.1 million against World Vision's $700,000, I wanted to ask MFAT if a third of the households seeing no increase in income is good value for that money. At the New Zealand Embassy in Hanoi, MFAT staff were told not to talk, because MFAT staff back in New Zealand would be interviewed. But then, when I got back to New Zealand, bizarrely, MFAT said no to my interview requests and refused to explain why the change of heart. MFAT's media team instead just offered a written statement attributed to nobody, saying that there is evidence of progress.
52 producer groups formed, 1,200 people trained, and 34 producer groups are now linked to buyers.
Asked what checks are done to make sure New Zealand's $2.1 million is being spent well, the unattributed statement said,
MFAT undertakes quality assurance processes throughout the life of a project. World Vision New Zealand provides regular monitoring and reporting on progress. This includes monitoring visits to the project by World Vision New Zealand and the New Zealand Embassy in Hanoi.
The project is due to end in May 2020. Future funding is dependent on how much progress is made, how much benefit Mrs. Bick and her neighbours get for nearly $3 million.
I want to go and explore the big cities in Vietnam, but because I'm so poor, I have no money to travel to outside places, so I just stay here.
A simple goal, just to leave her village for the first time in almost 4 decades. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
And Zach, who shot that story himself as well as reporting it, travelled to Vietnam courtesy of the Asia New Zealand Foundation.